yeah, for sure. I'm grateful, and indirectly it's responsible for my career.
Yeah. You'd like to do this as a series if it takes off?
Oh, sure, I'd love it. I think it'd be wonderful.
Lynda Carter bared it all in Apocalypse. Now look again. There is a photograph that most people have never seen. It sits quietly in the archives of film history, surfacing occasionally at auction houses and private collections, passed between hands that tremble slightly at what they're holding. It is professionally shot, beautifully lit, formatted with the unmistakable layout of a centerfold spread. And the woman in it, topless, confident, gazing directly into the camera, is someone you would recognize instantly. She is Wonder Woman, not the character, the actress herself, Lynda Carter, the woman who became the most iconic female superhero in American television history, the face of strength and virtue for an entire generation of children who grew up believing a woman could be the most powerful person in any room. That Lynda Carter, topless, in a photograph created specifically for Francis Ford Coppola's Apocalypse Now. And here is the part that makes this story genuinely strange. If you sit down tonight and watch Apocalypse Now from beginning to end, you will never see her face. Not once. She poses for the photograph. She flies to the Philippines. She prepares for the role. And then she vanishes from the production entirely, leaving behind only that image and a question that film historians have been quietly untangling for decades. How does Wonder Woman end up in one of the darkest war films ever made, bear it all for a centerfold photograph, and then simply disappear? The answer involves a catastrophic typhoon, a telephone call that arrived at exactly the right moment, and a decision made with $25 in a bank account that quietly redirected the entire course of American television history. When Apocalypse Now memorabilia began appearing at major auction houses in recent years, collectors accustomed to prop weapons, signed scripts, and costume fragments were suddenly confronted with something that made no logical sense. A Playboy centerfold, fully produced, professionally formatted with the magazine's signature layout, complete with a joke page printed on the reverse, and featuring, unmistakably, Lynda Carter. The immediate assumption was that it had been altered, edited, or fabricated entirely, because Lynda Carter never posed for Playboy. Not in 1979, when Apocalypse Now was released. Not before. Not after. The idea seemed categorically impossible. By the time the film came out, she had already spent 3 years embodying the most wholesome character on American network television. Wonder Woman did not do centerfolds. Wonder Woman represented everything noble and pure about womanhood, at least according to the version of her that ABC was broadcasting into living rooms across the country every week. But the photograph was genuine, just not in the way anyone initially assumed. What collectors were actually holding was a movie prop, a meticulously produced, professionally executed movie prop created under the direct supervision of a production team working for Francis Ford Coppola. Lynda Carter did pose for it. The photographs are real. The nudity is real. But the centerfold was never meant for a magazine rack. It was designed to sit on the wall of a patrol boat moving slowly through a jungle river in one of the most harrowing war films in cinema history. That distinction, real photograph fictional publication, is precisely what makes the whole situation so difficult to categorize, and so endlessly fascinating to anyone who has tried to piece together exactly what happened during those chaotic early months of Apocalypse Now's production. To understand why Lynda Carter was on that set at all, you have to understand where she stood in 1976. And the honest answer is that she was standing on the edge of giving up entirely. She was born Lynda Jean Cordova Carter on July 24, 1951, in Phoenix, Arizona. Her background was entirely ordinary: a working-class household, a father with English and Irish roots, a mother whose family came from Mexico. There were no Hollywood connections, no industry relatives, no inherited advantages. Just a tall girl with striking blue eyes and dark hair who discovered early that she could sing, performing at a local pizza parlor by the age of 15 with enough natural ability to make people stop eating and listen. After high school, she went on the road as a lounge singer, touring with a band across the country, chasing enough money to pay rent rather than any coherent vision of fame. By 1972, she pivoted to beauty pageants, winning Miss Arizona, then Miss World USA, then placing in the top 15 at the International Miss World competition. She later admitted she never particularly wanted to be a beauty queen. She was looking for a door, and pageants happened to be the one that opened. The pageant wins brought her to acting. She moved to New York and studied seriously, training with instructors including Stella Adler, whose approach to character work shaped some of the most significant American actors of the 20th century. She started landing small television roles, guest appearances on shows like Starsky and Hutch, Nakia, and others that paid modestly and left no lasting impression on audiences. In 1975, she appeared in a low-budget Western called Bobby Joe and the Outlaw that critics largely ignored. By early 1976, her savings from touring had nearly evaporated. She would later say that when the role that changed her life finally arrived, she had exactly $25 remaining in her bank account. She was, by her own account, days away from abandoning Los Angeles and returning to Arizona permanently. It was at this precise moment of maximum desperation that two entirely separate opportunities appeared almost simultaneously, forcing a choice that she could not have fully understood the implications of at the time. Francis Ford Coppola was already one of the most celebrated directors in American cinema when he began assembling the cast for Apocalypse Now. The Godfather had arrived in 1972 and immediately reshaped what people believed a Hollywood film could be. The Godfather Part 2 followed in 1974 and was somehow even more acclaimed. By 1976, a credit in a Coppola production carried a kind of cultural weight that few other directors could offer. The film he was preparing was an adaptation of Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness transplanted into the Vietnam War, ambitious, morally complex, and already showing signs of the production chaos that would eventually make the story of making it nearly as famous as the film itself. He needed actresses to play Playboy playmates performing at a USO show sequence, a scene designed to capture the desperate and surreal quality of wartime entertainment. The way thousands of men who had been living in jungle combat conditions would respond to the sudden appearance of beautiful women on a stage. Lynda Carter auditioned for the role of Miss May. She got it. The role was small, no dialogue in the original script, just presence and movement during the show sequence. But it was a Coppola film. For an actress with $25 in the bank and no momentum whatsoever, that meant everything. She flew to the Philippines in early 1976 and walked onto a production that was already considerably larger and more complex than anything she had previously encountered. Coppola had constructed a massive USO show stage capable of accommodating hundreds of extras. The scale of the operation was staggering. The attention to detail was equally staggering, which is what led directly to the centerfold. Coppola's vision for the film required that the Playmate centerfolds be entirely believable as real Playboy material. The story called for soldiers to purchase centerfolds at the USO show, and for one of those centerfolds, Miss May specifically, to be taped to the wall of the patrol boat that the main characters travel on throughout the film. The camera would linger on it. Audiences would need to recognize the face from the earlier show sequence. This meant producing a prop indistinguishable from the genuine article. Costume design work produced detailed sketches by Alex Tavares, pencil drawings showing every element of Miss May's outfit from multiple angles. The costume itself was built around an American Indian theme, incorporating feathers, fringe, and beadwork. It was designed to be partially removed for the centerfold photography, and the margin notes on the original sketches documented every accessory with a kind of precision more typical of architectural blueprints than film costumes. Carter posed for the photographs. Professional lighting, multiple angles, the full treatment. The final image was formatted to match Playboy's actual layout, complete with the joke page on the reverse. It was, by every external measure, entirely convincing. And then the sky fell. In late May 1976, Typhoon Olga made landfall in the Philippines. It was a severe storm by any measurement, and the first major casualty of its arrival was Coppola's enormous USO show set. The structure that had taken weeks to construct and that had served as the backdrop for Carter's centerfold photography was dismantled by wind and rain in a matter of hours. The destruction was total, and it brought production to to an immediate halt. There was a particular irony in how the typhoon ultimately affected the production. Coppola had already discovered, after the set was built, that its inland location was historically inaccurate. USO shows of that scale during the Vietnam era would have been staged near water, with troops arriving by boat. He had wanted the set demolished and rebuilt correctly, and his own production team had refused on grounds of cost. The typhoon accomplished what his crew would not, giving him the opportunity to rebuild the set in the right location when filming eventually resumed. But that resumption was months away. Cast members were sent back to America, while the production figured out how to move forward. Lynda Carter flew home. She had completed the centerfold photography. She had done some preliminary work. She had not filmed a single actual scene. She was waiting, with no certainty about when or whether she would be called back. While Coppola's production sat suspended in the aftermath of the typhoon, something was happening in Hollywood that had nothing to do with Apocalypse Now and everything to do with the rest of Lynda Carter's life. ABC had been trying to launch a Wonder Woman television series since 1974, when a made-for-TV pilot starring Kathy Lee Crosby had failed to resonate with audiences. Crosby's version of the character wore a pantsuit, fought like a spy, and bore almost no resemblance to the iconic comic book hero that William Moulton Marston had created in the 1940s as a deliberately feminist symbol. The network knew they needed to try again, and they needed to get it completely right this time. Producer Douglas Kramer began auditioning in early 1975. The competition was enormous, hundreds of actresses pursuing a role that could make a career. When Lynda Carter walked into that audition room, something immediately registered as correct. The physical presence was undeniable. 5 feet 9 inches tall, the dramatic dark hair, the striking features, the particular quality of confident warmth that the character required. She had the look before she read a single line. A pilot aired on November 7, 1975, and pulled 48% of the television audience that night. Nearly half of all Americans watching television chose Wonder Woman. 2 additional test episodes aired in April 1976 and performed equally well. ABC committed to a full series and wanted Carter under exclusive contract immediately. This was when the impossible situation became real. On one side, a Francis Ford Coppola film, prestigious, artistic, the kind of project that could establish an actress as someone to be taken seriously. On the other side, a network television series with steady income, a starring role, and the potential to become something more than another face in a large ensemble cast. Both were happening at the same time. Both required total commitment. Only one was possible. Carter's manager called with the news that the Wonder Woman role was hers to take. The Apocalypse Now production remained shut down with no reliable timeline for resuming. She had $25. She was days from giving up. She chose Wonder Woman, which meant she had to withdraw from Apocalypse Now. When Coppola was informed that Carter was leaving the production, he needed to move quickly. The role required recasting, and more critically, it required a new centerfold to replace the one they had already shot. Continuity demanded it. You cannot have a different face on the patrol boat wall than the face that appeared on stage at the USO show. He chose Colleen Kemp, a 23-year-old actress who was relatively unknown at the time. She traveled to the Philippines in late 1976, filmed the USO show sequence on December 3rd, and recreated the centerfold photography with as much precision as possible, matching the composition and costume of the original as closely as feasible. The new photographs were shot by Mario Casilli, a photographer who had worked extensively with Playboy, lending the prop an additional layer of authenticity. Playboy eventually published Kemp's centerfold in their October 1979 issue after the film's release, converting the movie prop into actual magazine content. But here is where the story takes its most genuinely strange turn. Coppola had shot some footage involving the patrol boat during the early production phase, before Carter left. That footage included shots of the centerfold, Carter's centerfold, taped to the wheelhouse wall. Some of that footage survived the editorial process and made it into the final film. Film historians and collectors who have examined both cuts of Apocalypse now carefully have confirmed what sharp-eyed viewers noticed almost immediately upon the film's 1979 release. In certain shots of the patrol boat, the centerfold visible on the wall does not quite match Colleen Camp's face. The image is slightly different, and that slight difference is Lynda Carter. Her photograph, the one shot during that early, typhoon-interrupted phase of production, appears briefly in both the original theatrical cut and in the 2001 Redux version that Coppola assembled with 49 additional minutes of footage. She is there. She just isn't there as herself. She exists in the film as a silent image, a ghost of a performance that never happened, preserved accidentally in footage that no one thought to remove. The Wonder Woman series premiered on ABC in April 1976 and became something that Carter herself could not have fully anticipated. It was not merely a successful television show. It became a cultural touchstone, arriving at a moment when the women's liberation movement was gaining momentum, when the country was celebrating its bicentennial, when the image of a powerful woman who needed no man's permission to act felt genuinely urgent and necessary. Carter understood the responsibility she was carrying. She did most of her own stunts, including an episode in the second season that had CBS executives genuinely alarmed about insurance liability when she performed helicopter work herself. She maintained the physical discipline the role required throughout the entire run. She defended the character against both the critics who dismissed it as escapist and the voices within feminist movements who questioned whether a woman in a star-spangled swimsuit was genuinely empowering or simply a different kind of objectification. Her own position on the question was direct. I think of Wonder Woman as a real champion of the feminists. She's stronger than any man physically. She is fast, flies in an invisible plane, and can force anyone to tell the truth. She played the role without condescension or irony, with a sincerity that audiences responded to immediately and have never entirely stopped responding to. The show ran for 3 seasons and 60 episodes, first on ABC and then on CBS, which picked it up and modernized the setting from World War II to the contemporary 1970s. Carter was voted the most beautiful woman in the world by the International Academy of Beauty and the British Press Organization in 1978. She signed a modeling contract with Maybelline. She released music, recorded albums, performed on variety programs. She became simply and completely a star. Compare that trajectory to what the apocalypse, now path, would likely have produced. Colleen Camp, the actress who actually played Miss May in the final film, had a solid working career afterward. She appeared in Clue, Valley Girl, and 2 Police Academy films, accumulating more than 100 credits over the decades. But she is not a household name. Most people who have watched Apocalypse Now multiple times cannot recall the actress who played the playmate in the USO show sequence, because the role was small, most of its scenes were cut from the theatrical version, and the character had no meaningful dialogue in what remained. That would almost certainly have been Carter's experience as well. A brief appearance in a great film, followed by the particular obscurity of being a recognizable face without an identifiable identity. The kind of career where people say, I know I've seen her somewhere, without ever quite placing where. The centerfold still circulates. It appears at auction houses attached to healthy price tags, sought after precisely because of how perfectly it illustrates the strange intersection of 2 completely different career trajectories at the moment, before either one became inevitable. Collectors understand that what they are holding is not simply a prop or a photograph, but a document of contingency, physical evidence that things could have gone an entirely different way. The costume sketches by Alex Tavalara surface occasionally, as well, those careful pencil drawings with their margin notes and detail studies, showing the American Indian-themed outfit, designed specifically for a woman who would end up wearing a completely different costume for the defining work of her career. And in the film itself, if you know where to look and what you're looking for, you can still find her. Not during the USO show sequence, where Colleen Camp performs and then retreats as the soldiers rush the stage. Not in any scene where a character speaks her name or acknowledges her presence. But in those brief shots of the patrol boat's wheelhouse, if the centerfold visible on the wall doesn't quite look like the actress you saw dancing earlier in the film, that is because it isn't her. It is Wonder Woman, preserved accidentally in one of the most celebrated war films ever made. a ghost image of a performance that typhoon, telephone call, and timing conspired to prevent. There's something almost parable-like about the whole sequence of events, though it resists the tidiness that parables usually insist upon. A typhoon destroys a set. An actress waits in uncertainty. A network calls at exactly the right moment. A choice is made under financial desperation that turns out to be, in retrospect, the correct one. But it only looks correct from where we stand now. At the moment Carter made it, she was turning down a prestigious film by one of the greatest directors alive in favor of a network television series that might have lasted one season and disappeared. She was choosing steady income over artistic credibility, a starring role in something accessible over a supporting part in something serious. The conventional wisdom of any acting coach or industry professional would have told her, in 1976, to do the Coppola film. Instead, she did the television show. And the television show turned out to be one of the most enduring things American popular culture produced in that entire decade. Meanwhile, Apocalypse now took 3 full years to complete. Its budget ballooned from $12 million to over 30. Its lead actor had a near-fatal health crisis during filming. Its director shot over 1 million feet of film and spent years trying to edit it into something coherent. When it finally arrived in August 1979, it was genuinely extraordinary. It won the Palme d'Or and received 8 Academy Award nominations, and has appeared on virtually every serious list of the greatest films ever made in the decade since. It is a masterpiece, and Lynda Carter is not in it. She is in it only as a photograph, a topless image taped to a wall, glimpsed briefly in shots that most viewers have watched dozens of times without registering what they were actually seeing. The star-spangled superhero, the icon of American television strength, preserved in a frame of one of the greatest war films in history, as nothing more than a rumor of presence.